Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد. My brothers, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you upon the sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That we understand that from the most important affairs of the deen is to understand the manhaj and the madhab of the salaf. To understand what they were upon by way of their aqeedah, by way of that which they called to, the tawheed, the manhaj, Islam in its totality, and that which they understood to be correct, then that is correct, as that narration from Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, when he stated that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked into the hearts of mankind and found the best of the hearts to be the heart of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So then Allah chose him and sent him as his messenger to carry the mission or the messengership and the risala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked into the hearts of the rest of mankind and found the best of hearts to be the hearts of his companions, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them and sent them alongside the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as ministers of his religion, as those who will call to the deen of Allah and defend and protect the deen of Allah. Therefore, whatever they hold to be good, then it is good, and whatever they hold to be evil, then indeed it is evil. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud really put into a nutshell for us the role and that fadl and that virtue of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whatever they held to be good, then it is good, and whatever they held to be evil, then it is evil. So the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and their understanding of the text of the Quran and the Sunnah is the understanding that takes precedence over anyone else's aql or hawa or taqleed or the following of adat, the following of habits and customs of the people. That their understanding is given precedence, their fahm of the deen, so much so as we mentioned from that qawl of Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala yesterday, in which he stated that they would give that the way of the people of the salaf is that they would give the precedence to the fatawa of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum before the fatawa of the tabi'een, and then the fatawa of the tabi'een would be given more precedence and would be given greater virtue than the fatawa of the atba'u tabi'een, and so on, due to the fact that the closer the individual is to the time of revelation, the more correct his speech will be, and his action and his belief. And of course, Ahlus-Sunnah, as we mentioned from that statement from Shaykh Abdul Salam As-Suhaimi hafidhahullah ta'ala, in that book Kun Salafiyyan, be you Salafis al-Jadda, be you Salafis with earnestness and be serious Salafis, that he mentions that no doubt Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah are the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. They are Ahlus-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And then whomsoever follows them precisely up until Yawm al-Qiyamah, then they are to be considered Ahlus-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And they are the Salafiyun, they are Ahlul Hadith, they are the Ahlul Athar, they are the Ta'ifatul Mansura, they are the Firqatul Najiyah, they are Ahlul Haqq, they are the people of truth. So no doubt this is the path of the salaf of this ummah. This is the path of success and salvation. So it is important, as we mentioned yesterday, to know those things that if an individual was to carry them out, what makes him a Sunni? And what are those things that were to violate them, that would remove him from the Sunnah, that he would not be from its people? Because we mentioned Ahlus-Sunnah, who they are, that they are distinguished with regard to the Kitab and the Sunnah and the Sahaba and taking their understanding. This is Ahlus-Sunnah, that they don't give precedence to their intellects or to their desires or to their habits or to their customs that they don't give precedence to the taqleed of any individual, nor do they single out a particular shakhs other than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be followed blindly to the exclusion of others, that they do not make wala and bara behind shakhsiyya, behind particular personalities and characters, and they say that this individual, whatever emanates from him, other than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whatever emanates from him is haqq, and everybody else, if he is in accordance to that individual, then he is upon the haqq also, and if he opposes him, then he is upon misguidance. Apart from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is not permissible to do that with anybody. And any individual who chooses an individual other than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an individual, and makes wala and bara around him, and chooses that individual solely to be followed to the exclusion of others, or an organization, a Jama'ah, or a Jama'ah, or a firqa from the firq, a sect from the sects, or anything other than that from the organizations, whether they call themselves a hizb, or a Jama'ah, or a Jam'iyyah, or other than that, that if anyone sets up a party other than the party of Allah, the hizb of Allah, referring to the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those who follow them precisely, and any individual, referring here to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, any individual other than him, and then they make wala and bara around him, love and hatred, allegiance and enmity around that individual, then that is what is considered as bigoted hizbiyah. That is tahazzub. And this is why we say that the Jam'iyyah Ihya Turath al-Islami is a hizbi organization, because their founder and the person they refer back to and the individual that they tolerate within their ranks, Abdul Rahman Abdul Khaliq, set up this type of allegiance around these qawaid and these principles. Hizbiyah also is around qawaid, principles that oppose the kitab and the sunnah. So an individual sets up principles and rules and regulations and constitutions that oppose the kitab and the sunnah. Then he calls others to follow them, claiming them to be representative of Islam, claiming them to be something that is good and in the benefit of the Muslims, yet they are in contradiction to the kitab and the sunnah. And then they make wala and bara around those principles. Then that organization is a hizbi, partisan organization that is from the sects of bid'ah and misguidance and ahwa. So when does a person truly become a person who is known to be salafi? And with what does he leave salafiyah? Showing precision and being precise upon this affair, using the established principles and dawabit, is from the most important affairs, or from the most important affairs in our times and in previous times also. What are those principles that establish a person's salafiyah? What are those principles that remove a person from salafiyah? And the reason why we give this affair so much importance is because removing a person from the sunnah without evidence and without burhan is a severe matter. And likewise, entering a person into the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah, one who is not from Ahlus-Sunnah, then of course this is folly and causes confusion and misguidance. So both affairs are important. What brings a person in and what removes a person from salafiyah. What are those principles? Because of course, if you remove a person from salafiyah and you say you are no longer a salafi, then in essence you are making tabdi' upon that person. You are removing him from the da'irah of Ahlus-Sunnah. You are putting him in amongst the destroyed 72 sects. So if a person is known for salafiyah, known for sunnah, known for uprightness, known for istiqamah, known to be close and connected to Ahlul Ilm, throughout all of his da'wah and his learning and his studies, then to remove a person from Ahlus Sunnah, from the ranks of Salafiyah, and to discard that Salafiyah from him and tell him that you are now a person of bid'ah, then they are principles and they are dhawabit and usul that we utilize before we do such a matter. And likewise, entering a person, you can't just say that a person, he's from Ahlus Sunnah because you feel from him warmth or you feel from him friendliness. A person who is classed and regarded to be a person from Ahlus Sunnah, then he must adhere to those principles that the Sunnah calls to and is upon. And this is our way. So we have been commanded to proceed upon the sound and correct principles. Then that is what protects us from both ifrit and from ifrat and from tafrit. It protects us from falling short and being negligent with regard to the rest of the Muslims. And likewise, it protects us from tafrit or tafrit, which is to go beyond and go to excessive with regard to this affair. And this is what protects us. These dawabit. And they have been precisely penned down by the scholars, by Ahlul Ilm. So much so that we find from that beautiful statement from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in volume 3 of his Majmu' al-Fatawa. And he also stated, also in volume 4 of the same book, Majmu' al-Fatawa. He says, so it is known that the shi'ar of Ahlul Bid'ah, that the distinguishing characteristics of the people of Bid'ah is to abandon the following of the salaf. For this reason, Imam Ahmad stated in his treatise, narrated by Abdus bin Malik al-Attar, that he said, أصول السنة عندنا التمسك بما كان عليه أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والاقتداء بهم وترك البدعة. That he mentions that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he quotes the statement of the great Imam. So he mentions, to begin with, he states, Naam. So he states in that point, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 3, فَمَنْ قَالَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ وَالْإِجْمَاعِ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. Whomsoever speaks with the book and the sunnah, and with the ijma' of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, or the ijma' of the early Muslims, then he is from the people of Sunnah and from the people of the Jama'ah. And then he stated, and then he made a reference to the statement of the great Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, where Imam Ahmad said, أصول السنة عندنا التمسك بما كان عليه أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. That the usul, or the foundations of the Sunnah with us, are that which the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam held on to, وَتَرْكُ الْبِدْعَةِ, and the abandonment of innovations. And likewise, Ibn Taymiyyah stated in volume 10 of Majmu' al-Fatawa, he mentions, and there is no one from the Imams, from the A'imma, from the great Imams and the scholars, except that he has sayings and actions that are not to be followed, alongside the fact that he is not to be vilified and that he is not to be dispraised for that. Meaning that he is not to be belittled and not to be cursed and not to be vilified, even though alongside the fact that we know that this individual has errors, that he has sayings and actions that are not to be followed. And then he continues to say, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, and as for the sayings and actions, when they are those which are not known to be absolute in opposition to the Kitab and the Sunnah, rather they are from the affairs of ijtihad, regarding which there is differing amongst the people of knowledge and iman, so these affairs may even be qat'iyyah, may be absolutely clear-cut to some, whom Allah has made clear the truth regarding. However, it is not possible and not allowable for him to obligate the people with that, with what is clear to him, with regard to that which is not clear to them. So it is possible, ya ikhwan, for an alim, that he has an error from the ulama of Ahlus-Sunnah, and that error is not to be followed because it is mistaken and it is erroneous. Yet at the same time, that we know that that's an error with regard to that alim and that scholar, so we don't follow him in that regard. However, at the same time, we don't vilify him, we don't curse him, we do not belittle him, we do not go around warning against that alim of the Sunnah, even though we recognize that he has erred in that particular affair. He mentions so much so that these affairs may even be qat'iyyah, that these umur may be clear-cut to that particular scholar. So now an alim has a position because he's convinced so much by the evidence that he has with him, that he's convinced that my position is the haqq. However, because in that position, aslan, that there are other ulama who hold other positions, because they do not see the issue to be qat'i, they don't see the issue to be clear-cut, so they may take another position, then it is not permissible for him to obligate the people with that which is clear to him that may not be clear to others, because they also may have adillah that other scholars may share with them that do not oppose the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, Of course, if they oppose the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah and the ijma' of Ahlus-Sunnah, as Shaykh al-Islam mentioned, فَمَنْ قَالَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ وَالْإِجْمَاعِ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. That if a person speaks with the kitab and the sunnah and with the ijma' of the Sahaba, and he adheres to the correct aqeedah, and he's upon the usul of that which the Sahaba were upon and they did not differ upon. But later on, that they were, or even in the time of the Sahaba, that they may have differed in some issues. Amur ijtihadiyya. So later on a scholar may come and he may take the opinion of one Sahabi over another Sahabi. He may take a position, or that the issue did not occur amongst the Sahaba. It's from the nawazil, from the affairs that didn't occur in the time of the Sahaba. So then the scholars research, and then they use the principles of the kitab and the sunnah and the ijma' to decide whether that nazila, whether that newly occurred affair, whether it is in agreement with the principles of the kitab and the sunnah and the way of the Sahaba or not. So in that regard, the scholars may differ. Now a scholar may take a position and he may say, Wallahi, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely clear to me. An alim may say that, because he's convinced by the evidence and the research that he's done. Like for example, Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, in the issue of the niqab, absolutely convinced that the niqab is not wajib. There was no two ways with Shaykh Nasr. He knew, he was absolutely convinced that the niqab is not wajib, and it is not an obligation, unless the father or the husband obligates it upon his daughter or upon his wife, and then it becomes an obligation upon her, not because the niqab is obligatory, because her obedience to her husband or her father is obligatory. But the niqab in its asl, he said it is not an obligation, but rather it is highly recommended. This is Shaykh al-Albani, convinced, because as far as he saw that the evidence was clear to him. But then there are other scholars, like Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen and Shaykh ibn Baz and other than them, who held that the niqab is wajib, that wearing it is wajib. So al-Albani, that it is not wajib, mustahab. They held it to be wajib. So they are convinced. To them the evidence is clear. Shaykh al-Albani was clear that it is that the niqab is not wajib. Now the issue is, as Ibn Taymiyyah has mentioned here, that it is not allowable for them to obligate the people with what is clear to them and not clear to others. Not permissible now to obligate to them. What is obligatory upon them, however, is the nas of the kitab and the sunnah, the nusus of the kitab and the sunnah and the ijma'. So now, if the discussion is removed away from the opinions of the ulama slightly, and we say, okay, put the opinions of the ulama to one side, let's look at the evidence that each of them brings. And what is the strength of evidence? So what a person is obligated with is what? Is the strength of the evidence of the kitab and the sunnah and the ijma'. And if there is not an ijma' in a particular affair, and the scholars and the sahaba radiallahu anhum differed, or that there is not a unified position amongst the fuqaha and the muhaddithun in a particular issue, and they differ, then upon the talibul ilm and upon the student of knowledge is to take whichever evidence is stronger from the various opinions. And then he is obligated thereafter to follow that evidence. Whether it be for one scholar or for another scholar, or against one scholar and against another scholar. Because now we take the positions of Ahlul Ilm based upon their adillah. Now this issue refers back to the usul. How does it refer back to the usul? Because the usul and the principles of the Quran and the Sunnah obligate us with the following of the book, the following of the Sunnah, and the following of the ijma'. This is what we're obligated with. And every difference of opinion, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And if you differ in any affair between yourselves, then refer it back to Allah and His Messenger if you believe in Allah and the last day. So now if a person says that I differ with so-and-so in an issue of deen, however, I will not refer it back to the kitab and the sunnah, this differing. Now that person has opposed a principle from the sharia. Because in the point of differing, he does not wish to refer back to the kitab and the sunnah. And he says, I don't want to refer back to the kitab and the sunnah. I'm just going to take from my shaykh and I don't care. Now this is something which is madmoom, something which is blameworthy and not permissible in the sharia. Now he's opposed a principle from the principles of Islam. However, in the differing itself, as long as the differing is between the ulama of Ahlus-Sunnah in the masail ijtihadiyya, there are well-known differences of opinions between the scholars. Well-known differences of opinions based upon evidence, and every party from those group affirm the kitab, affirm the sunnah, affirm the ijma' of the sahaba, affirm the fadl of the sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And when they see the various opinions, that they don't give precedence to their aql over the revelation. They don't give precedence due to their love of one sheikh over another sheikh. They don't give precedence due to the habits and the customs of the people, or due to the prevalence of something. But rather the precedence is given to the kitab and the sunnah. Then they take the position of one alim over another alim based upon his evidences. And even if you hold those evidence to be qat'iyyah, yet there is a difference of opinion, and the ijtihad is sa'igh, meaning the ijtihad is sa'igh, meaning that the ijtihad is something that is allowable, and the scholars have allowed that do not necessitate that differing to exit one from the ranks of Ahlus Sunnah, then we do not obligate that upon others, the actual position, so long as the person affirms that he is following the evidence, and that evidence may go against what you hold to be correct. Like in the issue of the niqab, like in the issue of the gold, between the differences between Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah on one side, and the issue of the gold issue with Shaykh Ibn Baz on the other side, where Shaykh al-Albani forbade the gold for Muslim women based upon the evidences that he had, that the woman cannot wear a ring made out of gold, nor a bracelet made out of gold, circular gold, and the necklace made out of gold. And he said that this is impermissible. As for gold in other places upon the woman, he allowed it. And then he based it upon some evidences that he held. Shaykh al-Albani, he refuted this. Now a person may take one opinion over another opinion, because this is the difference between Ahlus Sunnah. But he does not now say to the one who does not take his opinion, you are obligated to take my opinion. And if you do not take my opinion, then I will regard you to be misguided. Why? Because this is not an issue of usul. Because in the usul they're agreed that the ruju' is back to the kitab and the sunnah. I read the evidence of Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, and I read what he had written, and I read that which Shaykh al-Albani had written. And a person may say, well, I prefer the position of Shaykh Ibn Baz based upon his evidence. So now you give ihtiram to Ahlul Ilm, and you give to Ahlul Ilm and the scholars their manzila that they deserve, because they are the ones who give us the understanding of these nusus and these texts. They are the ones. And then we prefer one position over another based upon the opinion of the scholar who derived it from the kitab and the sunnah, not by way of taqleed. Because taqleed is something that a person should not enter into unless it is something by way of darura, something by way of necessity. So if it is necessitated for him because he does not have the ability to read the texts, to understand the texts, to understand the opinions, then as the salaf used to say, that the madhab of the ami is the madhab of his mufti. So in that particular issue, not that he takes that as an asl. What's the asl of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Ittiba'. The origin of Ahlus-Sunnah is ittiba', mutaba'a, following the evidences of the kitab and the sunnah. Then the exception to that rule in a particular occasion might be taqleed. And upon this the likes of Ibn al-Qayyim and other than Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahumullah, that they have mentioned that there is an ijma' upon that point, that for the ami who is not able to reach the evidences or to understand the evidences, or they are not at hand with him, meaning that they are not accessible to him, or he doesn't understand the language, or he doesn't have a maktaba that he can refer back to, or he can't reach the evidences, then is it permissible for him to make naql of the qawl of an alim, to repeat or to take the speech of a scholar without knowing his evidences? And the likes of Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, and other than them, from Ahlul Ilm, from them Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, from them Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, from them Shaykh al-Fawzan, and the great scholars of this era, even Shaykh al-Albani rahimahumullah, Jama'ah, that these scholars have stated that it is something which is permissible and acceptable. But the asl remains ittiba', that the origin remains ittiba', that we know the evidences for that which we're doing. So with regard to this affair, then there is that statement from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in Fatawa al-Kubra, volume 4. He mentions the innovation which causes a man to be counted amongst Ahlul Ahwa is that innovation which is well known amongst the people who have knowledge of the Sunnah, due to its being in opposition to the Kitab and the Sunnah, such as the bid'ah of the Khawarij, the Rawafid, the Qadariyyah and the Murji'ah. So the bid'ah that is well known, my brothers, the bid'ah that the ulama, well known meaning well known to the ulama, because many of the innovations may not be well known to the awam, but the ulama, they recognize something to be bid'ah. And therefore, that bid'ah that causes a person to be counted amongst the people of innovation, counted amongst the people of desires, is well known amongst the people who have knowledge. The ulama, they know it. And that innovation is well known amongst them. And they know that it is in opposition to the Kitab and the Sunnah, such as the well-known bid'ah of the Khawarij, the Rawafid, the Shia, the Murji'ah, the Qadariyah, the Jahmiyah, the Asha'ira, the Maturidiyah, the Lafdiyah. And in our times, the likes of Jama'at al-Tabligh, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the likes of the Jama'at al-Jihad, Jama'at al-Takfir, Hijra wa-Takfir, that these Hizb al-Tahrir, that these organizations, their bid'ah is well known. And likewise the bid'ah of those individuals such as the Qutubiyya and the Sururiyya and the well-known Ahzab and the parties that have set themselves up, that their bid'ah is well known and it is muntashir. The bid'ah of al-Haddad, the Haddadiyun, those who make tabdi' without dalil, and they declare Ibn Hajar to be an innovator, that they have taken this path of ghulu. So they declared Ibn Hajar to be a mubtadi' because Ibn Hajar had some ta'wilat in the sifat of Allah. And they declared Imam al-Nawawi to be a mubtadi' and other than them from Ahlul Ilm, because of these qawaid that they set up. So Ahlul Ilm, they know which are the affairs that take a person into bid'ah, and these affairs are well known amongst the scholars. Imam al-Dahabi stated in Siyar, A'lam al-Nubala volume 19, he mentioned that the ulama have not ceased differing. That the ulama have not ceased differing. And one scholar speaking about another due to the latter's ijtihad. And all of them are ma'dhur and all of them are ma'jur. All of them are ma'dhur, meaning that all of them are excused. Meaning the scholars of Ahlus-Sunnah. And this is why he mentioned the ulama have not ceased differing. And one scholar speaking about another due to the ijtihad of the latter. All of them are ma'dhur, all of them are excused, and all of them are ma'jur, all of them are rewarded. And whoever is resistant and obstinate or violates the ijma', breaks the ijma', then he is upon falsehood and he is untruthful, and to Allah return all of the affairs. Again, giving us a guideline of that which will bring us to the understanding of the Kitab and the Sunnah, and that which will bring us to understand exactly what are those affairs that take a person outside of the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah. So you'll find, as we mentioned, how many examples we mentioned. The difference between the various scholars over the issue of niqab, over the issue of, for example, in some of the affairs of Hajj, and some of the manasik of Hajj, in the issue of the salah, placing the hands on the chest after the ruku', or the issue of moving the finger in the tashahhud. Do we keep it fixed with our eyes fixed? Or do we point and move our fingers? And do we raise the finger between the sajdatain? So one scholar, the scholars will never cease to refute others and give their position the worth that it deserves. But that would never cause one of them to declare the other one in an issue of ijtihad. Not an issue of the violation of the usul. Not an issue of the violation of the ijma'. Not an issue where a person has taken the aqwal of Ahlul Bid'ah and propagated it and made wala and bara around it. And even after he had been informed that he continues and persists upon his bid'ah. And then we have that statement from Waliduna, Shaykh Muqbil al-Alama, the Muhaddith, Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his book Tuhfatul Majib, that he mentions, as for when does a person exit the manhaj of the Salafus Salih? It is when he falls into innovations and then he exits the manhaj of the Salaf, either due to tasawwuf, Sufism, or due to tashayyu', Shi'ism, or due to the establishment of birthdays, and due to the welcoming of the secular laws, or restricted, bigoted fanaticism and allegiance such as al-Hizbiyyah, which is to restrict and confines one allegiance to a person, shows allegiance in accordance to the hizb and displays and shows enmity due to the hizb, then this is something, my brothers, as the Shaykh has mentioned, Shaykh Muqbil, rahimahullah, that this exits a person from the Salafus Salih. So now you can recognize and begin to recognize what takes a person outside the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah. What takes a person outside the ranks of Salafiyah. It is those affairs, my brothers and sisters, that exit him from the fold, either due to tasawwuf, tashayyu'. It doesn't mean that it's restricted to these affairs. Because we have some bid'ah, as the Shaykh himself has mentioned, such as hizbiyah. And the bid'ah of those people who believe that secular laws can be combined with Islam, and that there is an allowance for this. Or those individuals who restrict and confines one allegiance to a particular person, as we mentioned earlier, or a particular party. What time is Salatul Asr? 2:50. 2:30. So then, to continue, that from this speech, it is clear that Ahlul Ilm, and from that which they have said, that the Sunni is the one who is known for following the established usul, the established foundations, the Quran, the Sunnah, and that which the Salaf were upon. And this ittiba is zahir and batin. This following of those three fundamentals, the Kitab, Sunnah, and the Sahaba, it is something that is apparent outwardly, and it is something inward. It is all encompassing, and he shows allegiance, love, and loyalty to someone, and to the ones whose religiosity and whose religion is in accordance with these three usul, and his ardent adherence to that. And a person becomes an innovator due to his opposition to these three usul, either in totality, such as those who leave Islam completely and they become murtaddun, the apostates, or they oppose a part of that, and that is known, a part of it that is known in Islam, and they make allegiance and enmity due to that. And this is why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala stated in his Majmu' al-Fatawa volume 6, he mentions, for this reason, from the manifest signs of Ahlul Bid'ah is innovation in speech and action, and then they make that binding upon the people, and then they hate them due to it, and they make allegiance due to it. This is what you see from the people of Bid'ah, even in our times, that they'll invent a principle, and then they'll palm it off to the rest of the people as if this is something from the deen of Allah. And then they'll say to the people, this is what we call to. And then they'll refute those individuals who don't accept the usul that they have invented themselves. And then, as Shaykh al-Islam mentions, that they make allegiance to it. And then he continues, and they establish enmity upon it to the one who abandons it. Just as the Khawarij innovated their opinion and made that binding upon the people. And then they established allegiance and enmity upon that. And the Rafidah, that they innovated their opinions, and then they imposed them and made them binding upon the people, and then they made allegiance and enmity around that. When a person does that, then he has exited the manhaj of the Salaf. He has exited the madhab and the methodology and the tariqah of the Salafus Salih. And you see that happening in our times. Person sets up a principle, sets up a qaida, and calls to it, and calls the people upon it. Like, for example, the principle of al-Muwazanat. That they will say that yes, when you speak about a person of innovation, then yes, mention his bid'ah, but you will never truly do him justice up until you mention his hasanat. And then they say this is the deen of Allah. They will say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated this upon us. That we mention that when we mention the sayyi'at of the people of bid'ah, that we also mention their hasanat, that we mention their good deeds. And then Shaykh Rabi', Shaykh al-Albani, Shaykh Ibn Baz, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh al-Fawzan, Shaykh Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, and the rest of Ahlul Ilm, that they refuted this false principle. But these people, they persisted. The Qutubiyya and the Sururiyya and the Ikhwan, that what they did was they said, no, this is a principle in the religion. It is not allowed for you to speak ill of someone up until you mention their good deeds also, referring to the people of bid'ah. So you don't criticize Sayyid Qutb unless you're going to mention the good that he did. Don't criticize Hassan al-Banna unless you're going to mention the good that he's done. Don't criticize Muhammad Ilyas al-Kandalawi, the founder of Jama'at al-Tabligh, up until you mention the good that he has also done. Because you have to be just, and Allah has commanded with justice. So mention their evil, but also mention their good. And this is something which is a bid'ah. For indeed, when the salaf, when you open up the books of the salaf, Rad al-Jahmiyyah wal-Zanadiqa of Imam Ahmad, Rad al-Bishr al-Marisi, Rad al-Bakri, from the books of the early salaf, Rad al-Bishr by the great Imam al-Darimi, and the rest of the books that were written against the people of bid'ah, the Rad upon Ibn Abi Duwad, by the likes of Ahmad and his students, the Rad against the Asha'ira. These books, that when the scholars they wrote in them, that you do not find them praising the people of bid'ah. Because the intent here is tahdhir against the bid'ah. So when a person warns against the innovation, and against a party of innovation, and against the groups of innovation, and against a person individually of innovation, a person of bid'ah, then you do not mention his hasanat. You don't mention his good deeds. And the one who mentions their good deeds, as these people did, and then they say that it's obligatory to mention their good deeds, and this is from the adl of Islam and from the principles of Islam, and then they call the people to it, they have left the manhaj of the salaf. A person may say, how many mistakes does a person have to make before he leaves the manhaj of the salaf? It's not about numbers. Did we mention yesterday? Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, when he warned against Shaykh al-Rifa'i in the city or in the town of Halab in Syria, over one issue that he commanded, and he said to the brothers, the Salafiyun of that town, abandon him, boycott him, don't go near him, don't be infected by him, over one issue, and that was that he claimed that Aisha radiallahu anha was infallible. Over one issue. So when the likes of Abu al-Hasan al-Ma'rabi, when he accuses the Sahaba of Khutha, he said, over one issue you're going to attack me? Over one issue? Say yes, over one issue. If you do not repent, and you have opposed in that issue the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, and the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah is that you do not speak ill of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. You don't mention their belittlement, and you do not accuse them of being fusaq, let alone that you accuse them of being the scum that floats upon this floodwater, as he did with regard to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the battle of Hunayn, and that which he said about Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. So now we say, if you speak ill of them, not that your kalam has ihtimal, like you do in some of the, when sometimes you may say something, right, about someone from an alim, and you say, well actually, it's not clear what you intend by this speech, right, can you make it clear? Then he makes it clear, and then you realize that he didn't, that there's that the ihtimal, or that it can't be carried upon two meanings. It is in fact praise that he's making. But this kalam, then it is absolutely clear that the man has cursed the Sahaba. Now upon him, upon one issue it is allowed. The Khawarij, one issue, which became two, which became three. Their bid'ah began as one. They made takfir. They made khuruj against the Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. They revolted against him, and then they declared him to be a kafir. You say for one issue? Say for one issue. Or for two, or for three. But a person can leave so long as he opposes, if he opposes in that, the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, or the ijma' of Ahlus-Sunnah, or that which the Ahlus-Sunnah united upon, in that issue where Ahlus-Sunnah did not differ, in the early salaf, and the principle that you are inventing is something unknown, invented from your own mind, and it is not from the kitab and the sunnah, not in its origin, and nor in the manner that you do. And even if it is a bid'ah idafiyah, like for example some of the people that they innovate in the deen, and they take something from the kitab and the sunnah as a basis for it. Like for example, some people that they may say, just as maybe as a mithal, that those people who say that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, that he appointed a shura of 6 who would then go on to appoint the next khalifa. So they say that therefore democracy is allowed in Islam, because he appointed a shura of 6, and those 6 voted or elected for one of them, and they voted and elected for Uthman. So therefore this proves the permissibility of democracy itself as an ideology to be introduced and merged with Islam. This is a bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. But they're trying to use something from the Sharia to support them. But there's no support in that. And many of the scholars from them, and from the foremost of them, the great scholar and our Sheikh Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, he made that absolutely clear. There's no room for democracy and a merging of democracy and Islam. And he attacked and he refuted Abdurrahman al-Khaliq upon that. As did Sheikh bin Baz. Same position. Democracy is not from Islam. And there's no merging between the two. And likewise Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh al-Albani. The democracy, as they mentioned, is kufr. All of these scholars. Sheikh al-Fawzan likewise. That they don't accept democracy to be something that has any basis in Islam itself. So therefore, these types of innovations that a person comes with, then they are refuted by all of the scholars. And the scholars don't differ upon that. The scholars do not differ upon that. Walillahi alhamd. So after mentioning this affair, it is known that many from amongst Ahlul Bidah claim to be followers of the Kitab and the Sunnah. And they do not rely upon the ittiba of the salaf. So it has become from the signs of the people of bid'ah that they have exited from that which the salaf were upon. This being a clear sign, some of the firq and some of the ahzab, some of the sects and some of the parties may make apparent attachment to the salaf. Yet they confine and limit their ittiba of the salaf to the aqidah as they claim. As for the manhaj, then they do not see it as something followed. Because these people, that they make a distinction. And they say that the aqidah means, to them, they say that the aqidah means that we follow the Prophet ﷺ in that which he has mentioned with regard to the affairs of the unseen. So in the aqidah, they say we believe in the punishment of the grave. We believe in the asma wa sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Ibn Taymiyyah has laid out in al-Aqidatul Wasitiyyah. So they say, these people of bid'ah, they say that we follow the way of the salaf. But however, as it relates to the manhaj, then they say that we are upon something else. Why? Because they confine and limit the manhaj, the salaf, and what the salaf are to be followed in, to the aqidah alone. So in asma wa sifat they say that we are with Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in al-Aqidatul Wasitiyyah. We believe in the punishment of the grave. We believe in the bridge over the hellfire. We believe in all of these affairs, the standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe in the intercession of the prophets and the malaika and the righteous and the pious and the siddiqeen and the shuhada yawm al-qiyamah. So in that regard they say we are with you. And then they claim, as for the manhaj, then they do not see it as something followed. So then you always find in their speeches, they say our manhaj is salafi, but our outlook is our outlook and our looking at the world is modern. Or they'll say that we follow the aqidah of the salaf, but we follow the manhaj that is relevant for modern times. This type of ideology you find from the tongues of the likes of those hizbiyin. That when you speak to them, they say, are you Salafi? We're Salafi. Then why do you revolt against the rulers? Because we have to deal with the rulers in the modern context. So they change their manhaj. Why? Because they make a distinction between the manhaj and the aqidah. But in reality, as Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala has mentioned, that in general when the term manhaj is mentioned, it refers to the aqidah. When the term aqidah is mentioned, it refers to the manhaj also. And this is why you find in his explanation, Shaykh al-Fawzan's explanation of the aqidah of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Waahid. When Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Waahid wrote his risala ila ahli al-Qasim, his letter to the people of Qasim, that in that letter he wrote, and I hold it to be impermissible. I hold it to be impermissible to revolt against the Muslim ruler. Shaykh al-Fawzan in his notes upon that, and he says, and this is the aqidah of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Showing that even though it's not related to the affairs of the unseen, it is related to the aqidah, that which the early salaf were united upon. This is the aqidah that we're upon. So therefore revolting against the Muslim ruler is in opposition to the aqidah of Ahlus-Sunnah. In one of the statements that Shaykh Abdul Salam al-Suhaimi in his book that was reviewed by Shaykh al-Fawzan and Ali Nasr al-Faqihi and by Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabari, he mentions in one of the footnotes a statement of Shaykh al-Fawzan the difference between the manhaj and the aqidah. He mentions that the term manhaj is slightly more wasi'. It's more open or more vast than the term aqidah. Because enter into it also, though it is binding and it is an obligation and refers to the usul, enter into it also affairs that are not related to the unseen. So no doubt the aqidah and the manhaj in general is one and the same. Except that which Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions, that the manhaj is slightly vaster, and he mentions it, enters into it the aqidah. The way that we do things, our methodology, the way that we behave, the way that we interact, our akhlaq, and so on and so forth, all of this enters into the manhaj. That all of this should be in accordance to the kitab and the sunnah and the way of the salaf. So our manhaj, and when we generally speak, as Shaykh Falah bin Ismail al-Mundikar hafidhullah mentioned, that which the scholars have mentioned, that when we refer to the term aqidah and manhaj, in essence what we're referring to is the usul. That which the early salaf were united upon. So how can a person claim today that our aqidah is salafi, but our manhaj is other than that? If your manhaj is other than that, then you've opposed the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. You oppose the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. So this is something that you find from many of the people today, who say that we're salafi, but we are salafi jihadi. As Shaykh Muhammad bin Ramzan al-Hajiri mentioned, that they'll say we're salafi jihadi. Is there anything a salafi jihadi? What's this salafi jihadi? Extra laqab that you've added to yourself. No such thing. This is a bid'ah. And then or they'll say that we are salafi qutubi, or that we are salafi asri, meaning that we are salafi for modern times. All of these terminologies are to remove themselves from the way of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. You are salafi al-jaddah. That's what you are. And that's what we are commanded to be. Salafi truly, earnestly and seriously upon the way of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. Salafi following the madhab of the salaf in every single affair of deen. That our usul and our derivation of the furu', how we derive the furu', how we pray, how we fast, how we perform hajj, that it is all derived from those sources, kitab, sunnah, sahaba radiyallahu anhum. This is the manhaj of the salafi. So even as it relates to the affairs of the furu', that we are united. Even in the furu', we may not be united in the conclusion, because the scholars, they differ sometimes in conclusions, as we mentioned in some of the issues of fiqh that we mentioned. But they are united in how they came to their decisions. That their decisions and their conclusions and their ijtihadat were based upon kitab, sunnah, fahm of the sahaba and the fahm of the early salaf. That they're united upon. And when a person exits that, whether in the usul or in the furu', then he's upon misguidance. Like a person, he says that I pray 5 times a day because, I went to the grave of Abdul Qadir Jilani, and he told me, when I was talking to him, that he told me that I have to pray 5 times a day. So he's agreed with us. But is he a person of sunnah? He's not a person of sunnah. Because the conclusion that he came to was the conclusion, and the method that he used to come to the conclusion is bid'i. So whether they're right or they're wrong, they're wrong. Imam al-Barbahari rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned. Whether they're right, meaning even in their conclusions they are right, they're still wrong. Why are they wrong? Because their manhaj of coming to the right conclusion was wrong. And this is why when the Kullabiyah agreed with Ahlus-Sunnah in some of the affairs of the Aqidah, the ulama such as Imam Ahmad and the companions of Ahmad, they made tabdi' upon the Kullabiyah, the followers of Abdullah ibn Kullab, which is even in essence modern day Ash'ariyah. The modern day Ash'aris follow Abdullah ibn Kullab. They don't follow Abul Hasan al-Ash'ari, because Abul Hasan al-Ash'ari made tawbah and repented. So they are still upon the Aqeedah of Abdullah ibn Kullab from the 3rd century. And Imam Ahmad made tabdi' upon him, declared him to be an innovator. Even though in some affairs they agreed with Ahlus-Sunnah. But he made tabdi' upon them because the way that they reached their affair was through kalam, was through aql. So they debated with the Mu'tazila in the affairs of ilm al-kalam using rhetoric and using their aql and their intellect, and they came to the positions of the sunnah, and then they said, look, we agree with the sunnah. And Imam Ahmad said they haven't agreed with the sunnah, even though their conclusions may have been correct, but they were wrong because their methodology was wrong. Like a person who sits in his house and he philosophizes. So he enters into the various philosophies of the Sufi and the Tasawwuf and so on and so forth. And then he studies science and biology and physics and astronomy and so on. And he comes to the conclusion that the Lord of the heavens and the earth is above the throne. He's above the seven heavens. He's not within the creation. Is he correct in the conclusion? He's correct in the conclusion. Because he said that Allah is above the seven heavens, above his creation. But is he rewarded? And is he correct in his manhaj and his usul? He's corrupted. Because the method that he used to come to the answer was corrupted in the first place. And this is why Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that the Ahlus-Sunnah derive their aqeedah from the Kitab and the Sunnah and the Ijma'. And then he mentioned the aql, which is sahih. Look, the aql is subordinate. What comes first? Kitab, Sunnah, Ijma'. And then he mentions the aql sahih. And the fitra that is salima. And then the natural inclination, which is salim, which is sound. So the first three. Now if a person says, well actually I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to go to the aql first. And then I'll go to the Kitab and the Sunnah. And if the Kitab and the Sunnah agree with the aql, then all well and good. Otherwise I'm going to make ta'weel of the Kitab and the Sunnah. This is the people of bid'ah. So when a person does this, then know that he's upon a maslak bid'i. He's upon a pathway of bid'ah. Like for example, the people of Hizbiyah. That they come to the conclusion that democracy is a part of Islam. So they haven't come to the conclusion, they've decided that. Now they have to convince you and me. So what do? Then they go back to the Kitab and the Sunnah because they know that we're not going to accept it. So then they go to the Kitab and the Sunnah and then they look for evidences to support their bid'ah. Same as the Qadianiyah. And of course that's a more extreme example. That the Qadianis decided that Ghulam Ahmad Mirza of Qadian was a prophet. Some of them say that he was Isa. Right? Some of them say that he was the Mahdi. But the most prevalent of them say that he was a prophet and that he was Isa. That he was a prophet of Allah. So they've come to their decision. Now how are we going to convince the rest of the ummah? Let's go to the book of Allah and prove that Isa ibn Maryam was not raised into the sky. Let's prove from the Kitab and the Sunnah that the Messenger of Allah is not the last prophet. And other than that. And of course they can't prove it, but that's what they do. Ahlul Bidah always do this. The Takfiriyun and the people of Takfir. And those who go beyond bounds with the issue of jihad and go to extremes, misunderstanding it. That they come to their conclusion that we're going to have to remove the Muslim rulers. They are all kuffar and we're going to have to kill them, remove them. Alright? So they've come to their conclusion. Now let's go to the book and the Sunnah to prove that which we're upon. This is a maslak bid'i. What's the manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnah? The manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnah is that they go to the Kitab and the Sunnah. And their aqeedah is based upon the Kitab and the Sunnah, not the other way around. We don't come to the aqeedah and then look for the evidence. We go to the evidence and that drives our aqeedah. Difference between maslak Sunni and maslak bid'i. The path of the people of Sunnah and the path of the people of bid'ah. So this type of speech that they have, I'm Salafi but I'm Jihadi Salafi. We say you're not Salafi. You're not Salafi. He says we're Salafi but we're Salafi of the Asr or Salafi Asri. That we are Salafi of this era. We say you are not Salafi. That you are Asraniyun. They say we are Salafi Aqlani. What do you mean Salafi Aqlani? That we are Salafi of the intellectual Salafis. Or as Usama Hassan said, I am referred to as a Wahhabi Sufi. What Wahhabi Sufi? You are neither Wahhabi and Sufi, they can have you anyway. We don't want you. Because you're a person who has innovation with you and you've opposed the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. So these terminologies, they are not accepted. And the people of the past, they used to use them from the people of innovation. They used to say that the deen is the Sharia and it is Haqiqa. Ad-Deen Sharia wa Haqiqa. Or they used to say that the deen, that it is the outer peel and the inner core. That we have the outer peel, which, what do you do with the outer peel of a banana? Throw it to the side. Or the outer peel of an orange. You peel it, you throw it. And then there is the core. So they say that the deen is of these two parts. So forget the outer peel. Let's deal with the core. This is maslak bid'i. That what they're trying to say is that you people growing your beards, peel. Don't worry about growing the beard. You people, you allow your thobes to rise above your ankles. This is peel. What's the core to them? Rulership, siyasa and politics and the hizb and the party. This is the core now to them. The core isn't tawheed. Core to the tawheed itself to them is peel. As one of them said, that you people, you fight the shirk of the qubur, we fight the shirk of the qusur. That you people, you fight the shirk of the grave worshippers, we fight the true shirk, which is the shirk of the palaces of the kings. Those who don't judge by Allah's revealed, they are the kuffar and so on. And that's a separate topic altogether. But that's what they do. This kalam and these speech and these terminologies that they use. And then when you speak to them and you say, where's Salafi? This is now bringing someone into Salafiyah that is not permissible. Not permissible. Because their usul are not Salafiyah. And then you have those from amongst the people of Sufiyah. The Sharia has that which is Zahir and that which is Batin. That's the way of the Batiniyah and the Sufiyah and even the Shia. That they will say that there is a Zahir Islam, that's for you and me. Because, we're stupid and foolish and we don't know anything. So we follow Zahir. As for us, we Sufis, then we have the Ilmul Batin. That which has reached us through the hearts of the souls of the awliya from their graves and from the heavens. That this is the ilm that we have. This is of course bid'ah. Upon that note we'll finish. And then straight after the prayer, bidhnillah, straight after Salatul Asr, I just need another half an hour just to finish the final section in this topic. And then inshallah we'll come back to it and then we'll conclude everything. Barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So in conclusion for today, that now we understand that when a person makes a mukhalafa of the sunnah of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he opposes the way and the sabil of the mu'mineen, then that person has exited the manhaj as-salafi. If his mukhalafa is to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such as a person who commits a sin such as theft, Allah has commanded him not to steal, so then he steals, then such a person has entered into fisq and sin. If a person innovates into the religion that which is not from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for which he has no evidence from the kitab and the sunnah, and nor from the agreement of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and then he ascribes that to Islam, and he says that Islam makes this allowable, then that individual has left and exited the manhaj as-salafi. An individual who opposes the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, and that which Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah have united upon in their books of Aqeedah of the salaf, the likes of Barbahari in Sharh al-Sunnah, and Imam Ahmad in Usul al-Sunnah, and Al-Khallal in As-Sunnah, and As-Sabuni in Aqeedat al-Salaf wa Ashab al-Hadith, and the likes of Al-Lalaka'i in Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, where he gathers the different various aqaid of the salaf of this ummah, and that which Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah has compiled and put together in Al-Wasitiyah and Tadmuriyah and Al-Hamawiyah and the rest of the books. And he opposes that which has been penned down by the likes of the Imam and the Mujaddid Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala in Kitab al-Tawheed, Usul al-Thalatha, Qawaid al-Arba, Masail al-Jahiliyyah, Kashf al-Shubahat, and other than them. And he opposes that which they have put down in terms of their usul and their qawaid and their aqeedah and their manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Then that person has exited the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah, though he used to ascribe to it at one stage. And likewise, one does not enter into the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah up until he affirms that the Kitab and the Sunnah and the Ijma' of the Sahaba, and likewise the understanding of the Sahaba, that is the source, and those are the sources of the deen and the sources of the religion that he will refer his affairs back to. And anyone who follows their way, that he will have allegiance with them. He will have wala with regard to Ahlus Sunnah. As Imam Sabuni rahimahullah ta'ala stated in his Aqidatul Salaf wa Ashab al-Hadith, that from the signs of Ahlus Sunnah is their love for their ulama. Love for Ahlus Sunnah, the A'imma of Ahlus Sunnah. loving them and loving those who ally themselves with them. And likewise, from the signs of Ahlus-Sunnah is their hatred of bid'ah and its people. That we hate them, and that we vilify them, and that we warn against them, and that we abandon them, and that we debase them, and that we warn against them. From the signs of Ahlus-Sunnah. And therefore, there is a difference, as you can see, just by those 1 or 2 points that I've mentioned, between that, those who exit manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnah, by way of opposing the usul, by way of opposing those qawaid and those principles, and the manhaj of the people of Sunnah who make an error in ijtihad, whether it be in the usul or the furu'. For example, Imam al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, is he from Ahlus-Sunnah or from Ahlul Bid'ah? Ahlus-Sunnah. Is he a person from Ahlus-Sunnah or is he Ash'ari? Who said Ash'ari? You need another lesson. He wasn't Ash'ari. He was from Ahlus-Sunnah. He is a scholar of Ahlus-Sunnah. But he fell into, in some affairs, he fell into some ta'wilat and some misinterpretation of the attributes of Allah. But he didn't take the qawaid of the Asha'ira. Because from the qawaid of the Asha'ira is to put the aql over the naql. That's from the principles of the Asha'ira. If something doesn't make sense in their heads, make ta'wil. If the sifat don't make sense, and the reason why the Asha'ira affirm what they affirm of the 7 attributes of Allah, and even those 7 they affirm them falsely, is because their aql and their intellect led them to that, because they gave taqdeem to the aql over the naql. Can the same be said about Ibn Hajar? Read Fath al-Bari and tell me that's what Ibn Hajar was upon. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, was Athari, a man of Sunnah, a man of Salafiyya. But he was raised in a period of time. He died in 850 or thereabouts. Rahimahullah ta'ala, 852 or thereabouts. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was raised in Egypt. And the people of Egypt and the scholars of Egypt and the mashayikh of Egypt at that time were greatly influenced. Number 1, by taqleed and ta'assub to the madhahib. Secondly, tasawwuf was widespread, even though, alhamdulillah, he wasn't from them. And also the madhab of the Asha'ira and the Ash'aris was prevalent in that time. So he stuck to the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. But in some affairs, that he fell into something of ta'wilat of the sifat of Allah. But that did not remove him. Now, if a person makes ta'wil of the sifat of Allah, is that from the usul or from the furu'? Usul. It is from the fundamentals and foundations of the deen. But he erred in that. Does that remove him from the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah? No, it doesn't remove him from the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah because he strived to reach the truth. But because of the environment that he was in, that he fell into some of the speech of those people around him. But he himself, in general, his general path was the path of Ahlus-Sunnah. Love for the Sunnah. Sticking to the Kitab and the Sunnah. Giving taqdeem to the naql over the aql. Following the revelation in every affair. Not taqleed of being muta'assib to any bigoted or fanaticism to anyone other than the Kitab and the Sunnah and the way of the salaf. But he fell into some error. And the same can be said about Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. The same can be said about Ibn Hazm. And some of the other mashayikh and Ahlul Ilm from the salaf who fell into some error. But they are still considered Ahlus-Sunnah, even though they may have erred in some affairs of usul, because they were just imitating, or they took from that which was prevalent in their time. But they never ever gave up their adherence and their love of the Sunnah. And if he had known, and this is the husnul dhan that we have for them, that because of their general path of following the Kitab and the Sunnah, not just general, the word general shouldn't be used there, their specific path of sticking to the Kitab and the Sunnah, and calling to it and establishing themselves upon it, if they fell into error here and there, even if it is in the furu', even if it is in the usul, they are still considered to be scholars of Ahlus-Sunnah. In opposition to the likes of the people of bid'ah, whose actual qawaid and usul lead them to their bid'ah, and they make these principles in the religion that cause them to go astray, as we clarified earlier just before the salah. So there is a difference when we're refuting the people of Sunnah and refuting the people of bid'ah. The rad upon Ahlul Bid'ah is different to the Radd upon Ahlul Sunnah. Ahlul Sunnah can Radd Ahlul Sunnah. Can happen. Shaykh al-Albani, when he made his Radd in the issue of the niqab, he made it upon some of the salafi ulama, Imam al-Tuwajiri, in an issue of deen. And he was a Radd al-Mufhim. Right? So Ahlul Sunnah can Radd Ahlul Sunnah. In some other issues, the Taraweeh, or the number of raka'ah in the Qiyamul Layl and the Tahajjud, Shaykh al-Albani's kalam in that, and Shaykh bin Baz's kalam with regard to the issue of the gold and the niqab and other than that, then you find between Ahlul Ilm some munaqashat and some rudud that go in between them, between the scholars. So Ahlul Sunnah can make radd upon Ahlul Sunnah. But this is different to the radd of Ahlul Sunnah upon Ahlul Bid'ah. So it is permitted to refute an alim of the Sunnah when it is conducted by another alim of the Sunnah, if a benefit is seen in that. However, the refutation here differs from the refutation upon Ahlul Bid'ah and Dalalat. Shaykh al-Islam stated in Majmu' al-Fatawa volume 28, for this reason, it is obligatory to make clear the condition of the one who erred in hadith or riwayah, and upon the one who errs in his opinion or fatwa, and the one who errs in zuhd or ibadah, even if the erroneous is a mujtahid who has been deceived by his error and yet is rewarded for his ijtihad. Is that understood? That's clear. That this is something that is done, and they make clear this affair. Like for example, an imam of hadith will say about a rawi who's known to be a scholar, known to be a person of sunnah, that he will say about him that his memory is weak, or that he mixes up his narrations, though he was an imam of hadith. Right? So this clarification is something that takes place. And even if a scholar is erroneous in ijtihad, then they'll say that he is erroneous in his ijtihad. And he's mistaken, this is the reason why he's mistaken. So this is something that is done between Ahlul Ilm. Even though he has erred, so the error of this individual is clear, but he is rewarded for his ijtihad. Making clear the speech, Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, making it clear the speech and action that is proven by way of the Kitab and the Sunnah is wajib. Making clear that error is wajib. And that is even if the opposition occurred by his speech and action. And for the one from whom it is known that his ijtihad is sa'igh, admissible, meaning that the scholars allow this type of ijtihad to take place, that they don't now remove each other from Islam due to it, or remove and also they do not remove each other from the ranks of Ahlus Sunnah due to it. Then he mentioned that it is not permissible to mention him, Ibn Taymiyyah's words, and it is not permissible to mention the alim from the viewpoint of vilifying him and ascribing sinfulness to him by calling him a fasiq. That he hasn't, because he made an error in his ijtihad, therefore you abuse him, and then that you call him a fasiq. For indeed Allah has forgiven his errors. Rather it is obligatory, due to what he has of iman and taqwa, to have allegiance for him, and to love him, and to establish that which Allah has obligated from his rights, and praise, and to make dua for him, and other than that. This is how we deal with the alim who errs from Ahlus Sunnah. Not that we accept his error. We don't say, well, he's right. Even if he's wrong, his error is correct. He's right from an angle. Which angle is he right from? His manhaj was salim, and his usul were correct. So therefore, even if he erred in his conclusion, he's wrong in his conclusion, but he'll get one reward from Allah, and we don't follow him in his error. But we don't vilify him. We don't curse him. We don't abuse him. We don't tell the other brothers he's a shaitan, and he's a fasiq, and he's a sinner. We don't say that about Ahlus Sunnah, from the ulama of Ahlus Sunnah who have erred in the Masail Ijtihadiyah. And you won't find this between Ahlus Sunnah and Ahlus Sunnah. Then we understand from this, and also that which, and also that the alim who erred, that we do not call the people to abandon him. So even if the alim erred in his ijtihad, he's wrong, and we say he's wrong, then we say, do not abandon him due to his ijtihad, and do not boycott his durus, and do not boycott his muhadarat, and stop taking knowledge from him. And he is not to be ruled with hizbiyah. So even if you see that his position is wrong, he may not be wrong, but the alim may see it to be wrong, because his ijtihad is different to his ijtihad. Both upon the usul of Ahlus Sunnah, deriving their rulings from the Kitab and the Sunnah. Not opposing that which is in Sharh Sunnah of Barbahari, or Usul Sunnah of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, or that which Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman and Ali were upon, or the rest of the Sahaba were upon. They don't oppose any of that. They're upon that which Ibn Taymiyyah is upon. They're upon that which Shaykh al-Islam, Muhammad bin Abdul Waahid is upon. They're upon the manhaj and the aqidah of Shaykh al-Albani and Shaykh bin Baz and Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen. They're upon that. But they may err in their ijtihad, following one of those great imams. And if that imam erred in his ijtihad, they follow him in that error. Not blindly following him, but they see what he saw. But some of the ulama, they don't see what the alim sees. So they refute it. But that refutation should never lead anyone to now say, vilify him, abandon him, boycott him. Wallah, he's a hizbi, he's ikhwani, he's in the path of hizbiyah, he's followed ikhwanul muslimin. This is not how we speak about an alim from Ahlus-Sunnah. And we do not say that he's upon bid'ah, so long as he remains a vanguard and a protector of the sunnah. So long as he's a protector, and he stands up for the sunnah, and he sticks to the usul and the qawaid of Ahlus-Sunnah, then that person is not to be cursed or abandoned, that we boycott from his durus, and then we broadcast it around the dunya. And if there occurs and there comes a rad from an alim, upon an alim, from a student of knowledge, then in general, though we don't say with absolute way, but in general, that when the student of knowledge, they are not to be considered from ahlul rad, of an alim of the deen. So a student of knowledge, for example, sitting here in Britain, he sees an error. He says, well, I was reading from Shaykh bin Baz, something. And wallah, he's wrong. I'm going to write a rad against Shaykh bin Baz. In general, the student of knowledge does not put himself forward for that. Rather, he may go to an alim. He may go to Shaykh Fawzan, or to Shaykh Abdullah Ghudiyan rahimahullah, who just passed away now anyway, or Shaykh Zayd al-Madkhali, whom you have a link with tonight, walillahi alhamd, from the scholars of this ummah. 7:30 this evening, you have a link with him. So be here for that link if you can, ya ikhwan. But you go to ya Shaykh, I read something from Shaykh bin Baz, and he didn't make any sense to me. And wallah, ya Shaykh, he seems to oppose that which we know to be correct. Ya Shaykh, can we have a kalima? Right? Like you find the sharh of Shaykh Bazmul, Muhammad bin Umar Bazmul, sharh of Sifatul Salah of Shaykh al-Albani. You got the book? Puyano, you got the book. Beautiful book, wallahi. The book of Shaykh Muhammad bin Umar Bazmul in explanation of Sifatul Salah of Shaykh Nasir. Yet in some of the masail, he differs with Shaykh al-Albani. But right in the muqaddimah of the book, he mentions the great station that Shaykh al-Albani holds in his heart. The great ilm and the muhaddith of this era, the mujaddid in deen, in hadith, in fiqh and in other affairs. And he mentions many great virtues of the Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah. Then when he reaches some of the points, in some of the affairs of the salah, he differs with Shaykh al-Albani with respect and honor. This is alim, with an alim who was greater than him. But now a student of knowledge comes along, and then he says, well, actually I differ with Shaykh al-Albani in this, and I'm going to write a radd on Shaykh al-Albani. In general, not in absolute sense, but in general, the student of knowledge should not put himself forward for those types of affairs to refute Ahl al-Ilm. For this reason, you'll find sometimes when the student of knowledge puts himself forward, the talibul ilm, he goes beyond bounds, and he becomes reckless and rash and foolhardy, and he overreaches himself. Rather, you find some of them attempting to put themselves forward, trying to show that he has the ability and the tools to criticize the people of knowledge. So much so that some of them will even criticize the aqidah of a Sunni alim, whilst no one has preceded them in that rad from the people of knowledge. This is the danger of the small student of knowledge. When the student of knowledge tries to, he's down here, the alim is up there. Shaykh al-Fawzan, 60 odd years in the pursuit and the dissemination of knowledge. A student of knowledge who maybe discovered Salafiyah in 2005. Right? Shaykh al-Fawzan, 60 years, all through his life, talib, teacher, sheikh, alim, allama. Then this small student sees something from Shaykh al-Fawzan. Became Muslim, 2005? Maybe 2002, 2001. Alright? Hasn't even, the shoots of his knowledge haven't even started coming out of the ground. The seed is still hidden under the soil. And maybe he still needs watering. But now he wants to be an oak tree. But he's only a seed. So now what he wants to do is, how do I turn myself into an oak tree? Let me chop down another oak tree. Right? I can't reach them, so all I'll do is I'll chop them down. So now he wants to write a rad against Shaykh al-Fawzan. So then he writes it, disseminates it across the dunya. So that then he sees himself, now I'm no longer a seedling. But you're a seedling. In fact, what you've done is you've buried yourself and made a grave for yourself. Because the desire of the talibul ilm to become something known is something that the talibul ilm needs to fight in his soul. This fame. How do I become famous? Let me rad Shaykh al-Albani. How do I become famous? Let me call fulan a mubtadi' or a hizbi. And then I'll give the reasons why I believe that they are hizbis. I believe. And then they'll bring masail ijtihadiyya, which the scholars, they're different, to make wala and bara around them. And if you do not agree with their opinion in that point of ijtihad, then khalas, then you have joined Ikhwan al-Muslimin. You are now like Sayyid Qutb or Hassan al-Banna or whatever. And this is why the small talibul ilm, when it comes to him refuting an alim of the deen, he should withhold and leave it to the ulama. Leave it to Ahlul Ilm and leave it to the people of knowledge. Leave it to the alim. And some of them will go to exaggeration because they're young and they have this hot blood flowing through their bodies. They will exceed themselves. Whereas the likes of those ulama who have spent years in the pursuit of knowledge, learned the usul, seen the world, seen the dawah develop over 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So now they can say, well, actually I was sitting in the dars of Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah. On that occasion I saw what Shaykh al-Albani said. Or I sat with Shaykh Muqbil. Or I sat with Shaykh bin Baz or Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen and Shaykh al-Fawzan. Or as the likes of Shaykh al-Fawzan himself states that I sat with Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti rahimahullah, Sahib Adwa al-Bayan. Ya ikhwan, the man sat with a mountain and he himself became a mountain. From his teacher Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, he was upon the Lajnatu Da'ima at the same time as Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz. So now when we speak against them, or when we want to make a radd against them, not that we think twice, 3, 4 times, rather we withhold. And we go to an alim of the deen, and we seek the nasiha of an alim of the deen. And we say, Ya Shaykh, I saw this in some of the writings of Fawzan. You say, Akhi, Fawzan is alive, go to him. Go to him, which is one of the rad, or one of the points of rudud upon Ali al-Halabi, when he wrote this As'ila Iraqiyya, questions related to Iraq, and he said Shaykh al-Fawzan said this, and Shaykh al-Fawzan said, I never said that. Also wrote a series of things that he ascribed to Shaykh al-Fawzan. They said, Shaykh al-Fawzan, did you say this, ya Shaykh? He said, I never said this. Whoever said this has made kadhib upon me. He said, no, he did say it. Ali al-Halabi, no, he did say it. Fawzan did say it. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, I'm telling you I didn't say it. All right, bring me the tape. There's no tape. He said there was no tape. You said it in a majlis. And it was narrated by Fulan and Fulan and Fulan. And then he starts narrating 6 or 7 people upon Fawzan. Fulan heard from Fulan who was there, and he said that Fawzan's. So when the rad came from Shaykh Abdul Aziz al-Rajihi upon Ali al-Halabi in this point, he said, Fawzan is alive. He's alive. Before you start ascribing things to Fawzan, the alim of the deen and the dunya, or one of the ulama of the dunya in our times, phone the man or write to him before you ascribe things to him. That you are a person who claims to be a person of hadith. Then one of the things that the muhaddithun used to do, that they used to make sure that the people between them and the rawi, or between them in the chain of narration, there's the minimum number of people in the chain of narration. So much so that the people of hadith of Basra, they used to say that we used to hear narrations that used to come to us from Medina, from the Ashabu Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we never used to be satisfied till we left and we traveled to Medina and we heard it from the words of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself. So that the chain of narration is always as short as possible. So with regard to these types of affairs, the small student of knowledge speaking out and raising his head above the pulpit, above the parapet, and speaking about an alim, then he should stay away from that. And he should not put himself forward. And he should not criticize and he should not claim that he has the tools. And some of them, this is what they try to do. Trying to show that they are something. So what do? Let's curse an alim. Let's vilify him, abuse him, and spread that abuse. Why? Because they extend themselves and exceed themselves in that regard. So then, whilst no one has preceded them in that, so look at this putting of oneself forward into the limelight. Whereas the reality is that this is jur'ah. This is audacity, someone being audacious and daring in front of the scholars. So beware of boldness and hastiness in front of the scholars. And the claims that we have jarh al-mufassir against this alim or that alim, or against this group and that group. And you yourself are a small student of knowledge. Maybe you only became salafi in 2004, 2005. That you have never sat with the ulama. But now, you want to now make the jarh. Because the only thing that you know about jarh is what you've heard, jarh mufassir, yuqaddim ala ta'dil mujmal. That the jarh, which is detailed, takes precedence over mujmal. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to make the jarh mufassir. And I'm going to send it from my account. And I'm going to tell the people, I did it. And you are not of the people who is capable of doing that thing. So when it comes to the ulama, and when it comes to the people of sunnah, then one should generally be very cautious and withhold and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to this affair. Learn the usul, learn the qawaid, learn the principles. Keep away from hizbiyah, keep away from ta'assub, keep away from the opinions of people. Understand the difference between those things that unite us and those things that divide us. Understand that when you refute Ahlul Bid'ah, it is different to when you refute Ahlus-Sunnah. Refutation of Ahlus-Sunnah is permitted. Ahlus-Sunnah make mistakes. All of the sons of Banu Adam, all of the children of our father Adam make mistakes. So we will make mistakes. But is it a mistake in the usul or in the furu'? Is it a mistake in the mas'ala ijtihadiyya? Or is it a mistake that is something that the scholars differ about? Is it a mistake that will necessitate separation and warning and tahdhir? If it is not, then we need to understand why it isn't. If it is, then we need to understand why it is. And that requires knowledge and years of study. Years of study. Not just taqleed of this one or that one, from any side, but rather studying and understanding how the ulama behave in this regard. And that which will aid one upon being just and fair is to understand and recognize the differences between the rad upon the sunni and the rad upon the bid'i. Here are some of the fawariq, some of the differences between when you refute a sunni, which is allowed, as we have mentioned, we don't discard that. When you refute a sunni alim, and when you refute a bid'i caller to his innovation. How do we deal with the two? Because in this issue, many of the shabab have ikhtilat, and they have mixed up, and they have fawda in their minds and how they understand this affair. So sometimes they'll refute a person of sunnah in a mas'ala ijtihadiyya as if he's a jahmi or a rafidi. Or they will go to the other extreme, and they will refute the person of bid'ah as if he is an alim of the sunnah. And they don't understand the fawariq between the two, the differences between the two. From those differences, we have that the differences, that the refutation upon the callers to bid'ah and tahazzub is wajib by kifaya. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah stated, so it is obligatory to refute the people of bid'ah and the people of tahazzub and the callers to that. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah stated in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 28. He mentioned likewise the imams of bid'ah, from the people who speak with opposition and contradiction to the book and the sunnah, or they have methods of worship in opposition to the kitab and the sunnah, then making clear their condition and warning the ummah from them is wajib by the agreement of the Muslims. And then he goes on to say the purification of the path of Allah and the deen of Allah and the minhaj and the sharia to repel their transgressions, the transgressions of the people of bid'ah, and their enmity that they establish due to it is wajib upon kifaya, meaning it is obligatory upon a group of the ummah. Then he continues to state, by the agreement of the Muslims it is something obligatory, by kifaya. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not raised those who would repel their harm, then the deen, the religion itself would have become corrupted. And the fasad of the people of bid'ah and the corruption of the people of bid'ah is greater than the corruption caused by the conquering of the enemy through warfare. Because when the enemy conquers by warfare, they do not corrupt the hearts or what the hearts contain of religion, except over a long period of time. And as for these innovators who call to their bid'ah, then they corrupt the hearts right from the outset. So their corruption is right from the outset. So this is the difference. And then we say, this is in opposition to the Sunni who is mistaken. For indeed the scope and the domain is vast with respect to the rights of the Sunni alim, the Salafi alim, by way of advising him. Or there is room to rectify that which has suddenly appeared from him, of mistakes regarding others. So the mistakes that he has of the Sunni alim is not to be treated as Shaykh al-Islam mentioned, of the other one, the one who calls to his bid'ah, and as opposition, because the one who is a person of bid'ah and desires, he's worse than the enemy who attacks the Muslim lands. He's worse than that. But the alim Sunni, then his affair is different. Because the affair or the mistake that has appeared from him suddenly, if that has occurred from him, is from those affairs where there is some allowance in the Sharia, meaning that the scholars, they have differed throughout time in the Sharia, then there is some allowance, and therefore there is room for islah. There is room for rectification of his mistake. Why? Because he has not opposed an asl from the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. And even if he has opposed an asl from the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, then he is advised. And if his mistake was open, then as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, then the correction of him is in public. Either he corrects himself or others correct him in public due to his error. And that is something allowable. But the difference being that he is not treated in the same manner as the person of bid'ah. His honor is maintained. Why? Because the room for maneuver with regard to the alim of sunnah who makes a mistake, then the room of maneuver with regard to him is different. And it's vaster. Right? And this is different to the one who began as a person of sunnah. Then he embraced an asl of the people of bid'ah. And then he called to it. And then when he's advised, like Shaykh Rabi advises, and the ulama, Muhammad ibn Wahadi and some of the scholars, they advised those people who went astray. And Shaykh al-Albani, when he advised that Shaykh al-Rifai, that even after that they persist in opposing something from an asl from the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, or even a branch from the branches of the deen, for which there is no difference of opinion, and there is no room for maneuver in the affairs of ijtihad, then such a person ceases to be from those people who are upon the maslak as-salafi, or from the path of salafiyah, or from the way of salafiyah. Why? Because now he's refusing to even accept the evidences and the proofs. The second affair, that the refutation upon the people of bid'ah and hizbiyah should not have any mention of their good deeds. Remember we mentioned the issue of muwazanat? The issue of mawazana necessitates that we do not mention the good deeds of the person of bid'ah who is being refuted. This is because the wisdom behind the rad, the refutation, is from the direction of clarifying the truth and nullifying the falsehood and warning against them and causing the people to flee from them. And this is in opposition to the alim as-Sunni, the Sunni alim. His error is warned against without warning against him and fleeing from him, and his station of respect is preserved. So for example, Ibn Hajar, that we mentioned that Ibn Hajar in some parts in Fathul Bari, his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, there's some ta'wilat. So be careful of that. And we warn you from that ta'wil that is contained therein. As for Ibn Hajar, alim of the dunya, alim of the deen, we love him and we respect him, al-hafid, muhaddith from the muhaddithun. This is Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. Right? So you see the difference between how we deal with the person of bid'ah and his error, and the person of sunnah and his error. Now this is different. If the error that he has made is in that affair where there is no room for ijtihad, there is no room to give him any excuse. So now that person is approached and said, you know what you said about the Sahaba, that the Sahaba was scum. Take that back. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, no, I'm not going to take it back. He said, Akhi, if you speak like this about the Sahaba, that the Sahaba were filth, scum, then Akhi, you've opposed the manhaj and the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah. Fear Allah. Make taraju, make tawbah. Imam Ahmed said this. Ibn Aoun said this. Imam al-Zuhri said this. Sufyan said this. It's made clear to him. And he says, no. Because I am a Sunni aslan. My origin is Sunni. So even if I make an error in the usul, you can't treat me like Ahlul Bidah. We say, no, we can. If the iqamatul hujjah is established upon you, and you persist upon your bid'ah, and if your call and your calling to your mistake was public, then we warn against you publicly. Because you no longer remain upon the manhaj salafi. You're no longer upon the manhaj salafi. But can we say the same about Ibn Hajar? We can't. Because there was no one there for him that could have gone to him or went to him that we know of and said to him, you know what, Imam, Shaykh, this mistake that you've made in ta'wil, it's incorrect. Let me show you what Ibn Taymiyyah said a century before you. Let me show you what the ulama used to say amongst the salaf. Let me show you what Sufyan said and Thawri and Ibn Uyayna said. Let me show you what they said. And let me explain to you that this is a mistake. Then it is hoped and it is said about those ulama who opposed. Those ulama, the likes of Ibn Hajar, Imam Nawawi, that if that information had come to them, that they would have accepted the truth when the truth had come to them. This is the husnul dhan that we have for them. Because they've died. So there's no way now of going back and saying to them and speaking to them and causing them to rectify. There's no way. But because we know what they were upon by way of kitab, sunnah, ijma', sahaba, fahm of the salaf, that we understand that if the truth had come to them, they would have clung to the truth with their molar teeth. But the one who is alive now, he's been put to trial. So now he makes ta'wil of the sifat of Allah. So an alim of the deen tells him, or that he curses the sahaba. So an alim of the deen tells him, Akhi, ittaqillah, you're alive. Let me show you that to curse the sahaba is from the affairs that take a person outside of Ahlus-Sunnah. And what does he say? Well, Ibn Hajar did it, so why can't I do it? Is that acceptable answer from him? It's not acceptable. Ibn Hajar is dead, rahimahullah. And we assume that if the truth had come to him, he would have taken it. We're assuming that when the truth comes to you, that you will take it, but unfortunately you're not taking it. So how can you compare, what Ibn Hajar was upon compared to what you're upon? Because Ibn Hajar, we say, do you not say that if the truth had come to Ibn Hajar, that he would have corrected himself? Then even this person, he would say, yes, Ibn Hajar would have accepted the truth if the truth had come to him. Then why do you not accept the truth when the truth comes to you? So this is how we understand some of the mistakes of the salaf with regard to this affair from the imams of Ahlus-Sunnah who may have erred in the usul or the furu'. But they are known in their manhaj and their usul and their qawaid to be upon the way of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, even though they may have erred in one or two affairs. But as for the ones who are living, right, and they have not died, and we have the opportunity to rectify them, like what Shaykh Rabi' and the Mashayikh, Shaykh al-Fawzan or Shaykh al-Albani, or some of the other Mashayikh, Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi and others, that when they corrected those who erred, then they persisted upon their evil, using these false qawaid. Treat me like you would treat Ibn Hajar. No. Because Ibn Hajar is dead, and his mistake is excused. But it does not mean that his mistake, that we follow him in his mistake. We can't excuse you for your mistake, because every time we tell you that you have made a mistake, you say that I'm still going to persist upon that, and I will still not retract the fact that I've accused the Sahaba of being scum. So you and Ibn Hajar is in one valley, and you're in another valley. You're in two different parts of the dunya with regard to this affair. Likewise, so we have mentioned that when the rad is made of Ahlus-Sunnah in an affair of the deen, like Ibn Hajar, for example, that we warn against some of the ta'wilat that he had, but we mention the good that he's upon, the excellence that he was upon, the books that he wrote, Fath al-Bari, Bulugh al-Maram, Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, some of the most excellent books in the field of hadith. So when we say that about Ibn Hajar, we mention the good. Why? Because he's an alim of the sunnah. When we warn against the people of bid'ah, Jahm bin Safwan, al-Karabisi, al-Muhasabi. Right? When Imam Ahmad warned against them, al-Karabisi and al-Muhasabi. And they were scholars, and they were students of hadith. They had knowledge in hadith. But Imam Ahmad never mentioned the good of them. And the salaf don't mention the good of them. They mention their bid'ah and their misguidance. And they don't mention their good because their manhaj and their methodology was a methodology of bid'ah. Do you understand the difference between the two, ikhwan? You understand the difference between the two? There is a third point. I don't want to confuse you with this third point. The third point is the issue of tarjama, as Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala mentions. That sometimes the scholars of tarikh and the scholars of history and the scholars of tarajim, those who make biographies of the ulama, what they will do sometimes is that they will bring the name of the people of Sunnah and the people of Bid'ah, and they will just mention their life, where he was born, where he lived, where he travelled, where he didn't travel, who he studied under, where he didn't study under. And sometimes they may mention that even for a person of Bid'ah. That is not something that enters into the Bid'ah of Mawazana, because the intent of those scholars, when they write the biographies of some of these individuals, is to write a biography, not that they are writing a book of rad against them. Do you understand the difference between the two? So when someone writes a biography of a person, like you'll find, for example, Imam al-Dhahabi. Sometimes he'll write the biography of a Sufi, and he'll mention he studied here, he studied there, he travelled there, he travelled there, he studied under this sheikh, that sheikh, this sheikh, and he had with him some tasawwuf, and he used to go this, and he used to do this bid'ah. So he mentions a biography, he's compiling a biography. He's not here compiling a book of rad. Right? So there's a difference between the two, as Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala mentions. But as for the scholar of Sunnah, which is the point that really we're making here, that when we speak against the person of bid'ah, we don't mention his good deeds. When we speak about a scholar of Sunnah, though we may refute, or an alim of the Sunnah may refute his mistake, that we do not now say that we stop mentioning his good. Rather we mention his good. Thirdly, that the callers of Ahlul Bid'ah and Tahazzub are warned against. The callers to Bid'ah and Hizbiyah are warned against. And the people are warned from taking knowledge from them and from attending their khutub, their sermons, and their muhadarat, their lectures. And this is different to someone from Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah who has been refuted in an affair of ijtihad. So it may be mentioned in the Rad that he is not to be followed in his error. However, he remains trustworthy and acceptable, and knowledge is taken from him, and his gatherings are attended. See the difference between the two? These are important differences that we need to understand. The fourth affair, hajar and boycotting, is made from the callers to bid'ah and hizbiyah. That we boycott them, we abandon them, we don't sit with them. And this is in accordance to the relative benefits. Right? That we abandon them in accordance to relative benefits. Meaning that we want to protect our hearts and protect our souls and protect our children and protect our communities from Ahlul Bid'ah. So we warn against them and we abandon them. Not so the alim as-Sunni. The alim as-Sunni who makes a mistake, then he is not abandoned. And he is not called, and we do not call the people to stop taking knowledge from him. Because he's an alim of Sunnah. If he made an error in the usul, if he made an error in an asl from the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah, then it is wajib upon him to correct that. If he made an error in that which there is no allowance and no admissible allowance allowing his differing to take place, then he must rectify that. If he made a mistake in an affair of ijtihad and he has some scholars who are with him in with regard to that, and evidence is to show what he's upon, and this is something which is sa'ikh, something that is admissible, like the examples that I used earlier, the pointing of the finger in the salah, in the tashahhud. For example, do we move it? Do we keep it still? Do we do it throughout the whole of the tashahhud, or only through the du'as of the tashahhud? These are areas and arenas of difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh al-Albani and Shaykh bin Baz hold three different opinions with regard to this affair. And Shaykh Muqbil also. Right? So they hold different opinions with regard to this affair. Now, one alim may see that the opinion of another alim is weak. So he may say, my respected brother Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah has made a mistake in this. So that the brother should follow the hadith, like the position of Shaykh Muqbil. So he is permissible for him to write in that regard, alim about an alim. Even though Shaykh al-Albani Of course, Shaykh Muqbil used to regard him to be from his teachers. But nevertheless, an alim upon an alim. And this is something that is allowable. But at the same time, that he is not to be called to be abandoned. If the error was in usul, in the foundations of the religion, and he persists upon his error in the usul of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, after the clear guidance has come to him, then he no longer remains within Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Clear? And this is why, you have these fly-by-night tullab who appear one day and disappear the next. Right? They appear, and some of them may even last a couple of years, several years in the da'wah. But because they put themselves forward, and because they had this audacity, that they did not refer back to Ahlul Ilm, and they regarded themselves to be the vanguards of the Sunnah, that they have no need of return to Ahlul Ilm. So for a period of time you find them upon the Sunnah, even showing signs of defending the Sunnah. But because of their zealousness, outreaching themselves, regarding themselves to be the level of the ulama who were kibar, that you find them falling by the wayside. Why? Because then they start saying things that they shouldn't say. And they start speaking without reference back to the ulama of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And we have seen them come and go throughout the years. Fifthly, vilifying, and this is the last point, vilifying and exposing the du'atul batil is a Shar'i requirement. Vilifying them and exposing the callers to falsehood is a requirement in the Sharia, in accordance to the ability and the benefits to be attained, and in accordance to the effect of their bid'ah. This is different to the Sunni, because the Sunni, then upon him and for him there is gentleness, there is lutf, and there is rifq, mildness and mercy. And that is the asl with regard to the Sunni alim who makes a mistake. That's the origin with regard to him. And if there is some perceived maslaha to exit this asl, this origin of being gentle to him, then it is allowed in accordance to need. So for example, you find Shaykh al-Albani sometimes getting tough with Imam al-Tuwajiri over the issue of the niqab, because he felt that there was a need to show some harshness, right? But the origin is to have gentleness and mildness and mercy and rifq and lean when you are speaking against an alim of the Sunnah, and one alim upon another alim. So if that's an alim upon an alim, when they refute each other, and they are both from Ahlus Sunnah, then what about the talib? Or what about the one who's not even a talib, not even a tuwailib, not even a small student, but he's nothing except carrying tales and just narrating what he has heard in this ear and comes out of his mouth. And there's a wisdom why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you one mouth and two ears. Listen more than you speak. But these guys speak more than they listen. And they speak more than they learn. And they speak more than they understand. And they speak more than that which the ulama have spoken. And they go beyond bounds. Why? Because they're new. They're jadid. But they regard themselves to be mountains. They regard themselves to be mountains. So they stand upon the shoulders of others, or upon, should I say rather, the dead bodies of others. That they bring down the corpse of other people and they stand upon them to make themselves raised up higher. This affair is not for them. And they should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is what destroys the ukhuwah and brotherhood and salafiyah. Meaning the Salafi brotherhood. It destroys it. Because they are not ahl for this. They are not the people who are distinguished with rad. They haven't studied the usul. And they haven't learnt what issues unite and what issues divide. They don't know that the asl with Ahlus-Sunnah, when you refute an alim from Ahlus-Sunnah, is that you show gentleness and mildness. And that you do not exit him from the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah, except after iqamatul hujjah. That you do not exit them out of the ranks of Ahlus-Sunnah, and if the issue is a matter of ijtihad, then you don't exit them anyway. If it is from the masail ijtihadiyah, so long as they are scholars of the people of Sunnah upon the manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnah. And one should not understand from this speech that the one who speaks against Ahlul Bidah wa Tahazzub, that he should speak with transgression and oppression, because of course we mentioned that vilifying and exposing and debasing the people of Batil is something that is a Shar'i requirement. To debase them, to speak ill of them, and to vilify them, and to warn against them, and to boycott them, and not to sit with them. The Ahlus-Sunnah don't do that with Ahlul Bid'ah. We don't sit with them. Why? To protect our souls from their misguidance. So when we say that we vilify them, then the intent of this tashni' or this vilification is to make clear the harm of their bid'ah upon the Muslim. The harm of their bid'ah upon Ahlus-Sunnah and upon the Muslimin at large. And their audacious behavior, this jur'ah, this daring that they have in spreading their bid'ah, and how the people are put to trial by way of their bid'ah. It doesn't mean that we start lying about them. Ahlus-Sunnah don't lie about Ahlul Bid'ah. When we warn against them, we warn against them upon the truth. When we speak against them, we speak against them upon the truth. This is with regard to Ahlul Bid'ah. We don't lie about them. We don't invent stories about them. We don't take their words out of context. We don't cut their speech. Rather, we speak about Ahlul Bid'ah with justice. So when we warn against them, debase them, criticize them, boycott them, then all of this is upon truthfulness and sidq and ikhlas for the deen of Allah. If this is how we are with Ahlul Bid'ah, rather even with the kafir, this is how we deal with them. We don't lie about them. We don't oppress them. We are not unjust towards them. If this is how we are with Ahlul Bid'ah and the kuffar, then how should we be with Ahlus-Sunnah? We lie about them. We go beyond bounds, cursing them, lying upon them. We never do this. And the ulama of Ahlus-Sunnah, walillahi alhamd, that they have laid down these principles and qawaid with regard to how Ahlus-Sunnah are with Ahlus-Sunnah, how they are with each other, and how a person leaves the Sunnah. How a person now from Ahlus-Sunnah, that a couple of months ago he's from the Ahlus-Sunnah, and then a couple of months later he leaves Ahlus-Sunnah. How? What are those principles, qawaid? Important, ya ikhwan, that we understand these types of affairs, and we don't respond to every caller that calls out to us. Rather, we think and we ponder and we study and we learn, so that we do not fall into misguidance and we do not take the rights of others. And upon that note we'll conclude. Barakallahu feekum. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakumullahu khairan, ikhwan, for being patient and for taking heed and listening to that which I have stated. And just to mention the announcement that the brothers, that there is a link that the brothers have today with Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali, hafidhahullah ta'ala, in explanation of the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi at 7:30 p.m. And likewise at 6 p.m. that in Birmingham, and also upon Pal Talk, that the brothers have a weekly link in the explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed with our Sheikh Ubaid bin Abdullah al-Jabari. And you should try as much as you are able to listen to these telelinks and listen to them and benefit from them. Is it correct to say that al-Muntada al-Islamiyya or is al-Muntada al-Islami are upon bid'ah? Then yes, it is correct to say that they are upon bid'ah, and that their foundation was upon bid'ah, that they are callers to bid'ah. They are upon the da'wah of Muhammad Surur Zain al-Abidin. This is their da'wah, this is what they are upon, even if they display on occasions something that resembles the sunnah. Then that does not make a person of sunnah, just because he sometimes resembles something of the sunnah, because that is only by way of his deception. Like the scorpion that digs its poison, that it puts its poison part under the ground waiting for you to come. And then when you're close, that it pounces upon you and stings you. So yes, they are upon bid'ah, as Sheikh Muqbil has stated, and many of the scholars have stated. Is it okay to make a comparison between Ibn Hajar and Sayyid Qutb? The one who makes a comparison between Ibn Hajar and Sayyid Qutb is a person who does not know Ibn Hajar, or he does not know Sayyid Qutb, one or the two. He does not know Ibn Hajar, or he does not know Sayyid Qutb. Because if he knew Sayyid Qutb, he would know that Sayyid Qutb opposes the usul and the qawaid and the aqidah and the manhaj of Ahlus-Sunnah right from the outset. He has with him tasawwuf, believing, and he has with him wahdatul wujud, believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everywhere. He has with him tasawwuf, glorifying and mentioning and venerating the people of tasawwuf. He has with him tashayyu and the ideas of the Rafida Shia in his cursing of the Sahaba like Uthman radiallahu anhu and Amr ibn al-As and other than them. He also has with him the ideas of the Khawarij in his takfir of the whole of the Ummah and his takfir of the Muslim rulers. He has with him the ideas of the Mu'tazila and the Ash'ariyyah in his Aqidah with regard to the names and attributes of Allah, with regard to Ta'wil and Ta'til. The man is a combination of almost all of the 72 sects except for Ahlus-Sunnah. So no, there is no comparison between the two. Secondly, that he was warned against in his lifetime. And he was spoken about in his lifetime by Mahmud Shakir rahimahullah ta'ala, the brother of Ahmad Shakir. And he was spoken against publicly and he refused to recant. Rather, he became worse. As time went on, the man became worse and more bitter and more twisted in his aqidah than he ever was before. So no, there is no comparison between the Imam and the Hafidh Ibn Hajar and this ignoramus innovator Sayyid Qutb. So much so that Shaykh Ubayd bin Abdullah al-Jabiri, he mentioned, he said, I used to hold with regard to takfir of him, to withhold. He said, I myself, then I'm upon the position of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, that it is wara', it is from the bab of wara', of piety, that I do not declare him to be a kafir. However, if someone else was to declare him to be a kafir, then I would not make inkar of him. This is to the extent of the damage that Sayyid Qutb has, or the destruction that Sayyid Qutb has in his aqidah. His mockery of Musa alayhi salam, mocking the prophets. He's claiming that the Quran is made. This is from the aqidah of the Jahmiyyah. So this is why the scholar Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned that about Sayyid Qutb, that it is that were it not for piety and for the fear of Allah, that we would have declared him to be an unbeliever. How do you advise the brothers and sisters who get into matters of refutation between two scholars of Ahlus-Sunnah, warning against it? This is what the whole lecture was about. Repeat the lecture. I've told you that if an alim of Ahlus-Sunnah makes a mistake, if an alim of Ahlus-Sunnah makes, and it's clear that he's made a mistake, right? But the mistake is an issue of ijtihad, that is sa'igh, that is admissible. Not that he's correct, both sides can't be correct, one is right, one is wrong, but it's an admissible one, meaning that it is not something that necessitates hajar, boycotting, tahdhir, warning against, calling him a bid'i, calling him a hizbi, right? Then we accept that he made a mistake. Who can't make a mistake? But we do not go to the extent of all of those points that we mentioned. We do not deal with him like a bid'i. And we do not make wala and bara around this one or that one. Keep away from these types of affairs, my brothers, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may protect us from falling into, injustice. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Generally speaking, that any alim who visits a place where that place is known for hizbiyah or mukhalafat to the sunnah, the alim is visiting for one of three reasons. Either the alim is visiting because he doesn't know, and that's possible, something has slipped him, so he doesn't know about their mistakes. Secondly, that he knows their mistakes, so he's going to correct them. He's going to correct them and speak about their bid'ah and speak about the errors that they're upon to rectify them, so they are rectified. Or the third reason why he's attending is because he's been lied to. Someone has gone to him, Ya Shaykh, Wallahi, we are the Salafis in Britain. Every Salafi in Britain, they became Salafi through us. Oh, Wallahi, Ya Shaykh, we are spreading da'wah to Salafiyah and we are upon the Sunnah. So the Shaykh says, Wallahi, yeah. Is that what you're upon? We're upon this. So the Shaykh says, do you have any of your, any literature? He says, yes, Ya Shaykh, we have da'watuna. Like Ihya Turath have da'watuna. They have a written article in which they say, this is what we call to. So then they present that to the Shaykh. Our da'wah is to the kitab and the sunnah, and we stick to the madhab of the salaf, and we are people who do not have any ta'assub, and we are upon the manhaj of tasfiyah wa tarbiyah, and so on and so forth. So then they give that to the Shaykh. MashaAllah. So they've lied to him. So the Shaykh attends for one of these three reasons. Now, as for us, if you know that the one who is translating for them is a person who is deviated and twisted, that he will lie in the translation, and at the end of the session, that now the mic comes to him and he gives his 20-minute 2 pence worth, warning against other Salafis, speaking ill about other Salafis, because the Shaykh don't understand English, or the Shaykh doesn't know what he's talking about. So now he's used that half an hour or that hour where the Shaykh is talking about the manners of hosting a guest. The Shaykh is talking about the manners of hosting a guest. So now the Shaykh has finished, and now the brother takes the mic, he says, and anyone who says that we are not upon salafiyah, then they are kadhabeen. Wallahi, we're upon salafiyah. So now those people who have got ghulu with them, and they have with them this and this and this, and then he starts attacking the salafis. That's the danger of attending places like that. So some of the brothers phoned Sheikh Falah Ismail. He said, listen, if they are mashayikh of Ahlus-Sunnah, which they are, some of them aren't, right? Those speakers, if you invite a speaker from Ihya Turath al-Islami, immediately you caution yourself from that. We don't sit with speakers who are employed under the employment of Ihya Turath al-Islami, right, for protection, because we don't know what their hal is. In fact, we know what the hal of the Jama'ah is, and it's most probable that he is upon the same thing that the Jama'ah is upon, by way of being employed by them, supported by them, and so on, right? And others of them who are mashayikh, who don't maybe know this affair, right? So Sheikh Falah, he said, just how many of their tapes are available on the internet from the websites? Go to the tape, download the tape, and listen to them. Some of their lectures are live from Saudi Arabia on Ida'atul Quran that you can get direct from the internet. Listen to them live. Why do you have to gather and make them feel and re-emphasize that which they have been lied to upon? That all of these Salafis are because of us. So now you turn up and they say, see, ya Shaykh, we told you, all of them are us, product of our da'wah. They're not product of your da'wah. They're not a product of your da'wah. In essence, really, if the brothers have the ability to write, they should write to the Shaykh and tell him, ya Shaykh, wallahi, they are not upon the Sunnah as you perceive it to be. They are people who cooperate with the people of Sufiya, grave worship, tasawwuf, that they sit with the Mubtadi'ah and they promote them and they speak well of them and they venerate them and they revere them. And ya Shaykh, for this reason, ya Shaykh, we don't attend that masjid because of the fear that some of that deviation may enter us. So we don't attend that masjid or that markaz. And ya Shaykh, if you can advise them, advise them. And as for us, ya Shaykh, we love you. We'll download your lectures. We listen to your lectures live on the internet when you speak in the Mamlaka. And we download your cassettes and so on. And this is how we deal with the affair, rather than going there and being confused by them. Wallahu a'lam. The issue of jarh mufassar, does it precede a general praise? Then of course, yes, a detailed refutation with the proofs that it takes precedence over the ta'dil, which is mujmal. There's a principle in jarh wa ta'dil, and it remains till yawm al-qiyamah. Walillahi alhamd. Jazakumullahu khairan. On that note, ikhwan, I'm going to have to leave because I have to get to Birmingham by 6 o'clock for the telelink with Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabari, hafidhahullah ta'ala. So if you excuse me, barakallahu feekum, and let me just make a quick exit. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Assalamu alaikum. If the brothers, inshallah, will just remain seated and remain in a masjid, and if the sisters can leave, if they want to buy any refreshments or anything, any CDs and books, and let the sisters, inshallah, get a chance to buy anything, and then so they can leave, because we have to be out the sister has to be out of the place by 4 o'clock, inshallah. So the brothers just stay in the masjid, and if all the brothers just move to the side so we can set up the sister section for the telelink, because we will be using the masjid for the both brothers and sisters, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum.